on the track up at state. And I'm bringing to you live my boys Alec and Nate, Tequila Ty, Jay, Nelly, and Zillin in the building. So kick it back, pour the drink. We chillin' because I'm boozing and betting and ballin' like I'm 2-6 in the blue kicks. Watch me move quick. Yeah, this the blueprint. So who's getting involved? Welcome into the show. This is Booze, Bets, and Ball, baby.
I need to ban the private chat on here, but welcome to the Booze, Bets, and Ball, a Penn State football podcast brought to you by Big Banter. This is our season preview show for Penn State, and then at the end, we're actually going to do some national predictions, but that'll be in a separate video, so you'll probably see that the following day. But yeah, it's going to be one big video, so we should be joined by a pretty big guest in a little bit that's going to help us break down the team and some other stuff. But for the time being, we are going to get into the games, go game by game. All four of us were supposed to have 3 games, but Nelly is nowhere to be found. But I did kind of have him here in a way. So yeah, he's here in spirit.
He's celebrating his final silly week, so we can give him a pass for this.
Yeah, we gave him a pass. He should be here next week because no one knows more about the first team on Penn State's schedule actually than Nelly, considering like half his family goes there or something. So we're going to get his insight on that. So yeah, Penn State starts the 2023 season against West Virginia, a team they've not played in a while, as you'll see here. So 7:30 kick, NBC, first NBC night Big Ten game in this new TV deal that the Big Ten network, or just the Big Ten, I guess, has. Penn State, a huge favorite early, 20.5-point line so far. Nate's favorite ESPN matchup predictor gives Penn State almost a 90% chance to win. Last time these two teams faced, 1992, so it's been a while. Penn State won that 40-26, and Penn State has honestly dominated this all-time series. I didn't realize it was that lopsided, 48-9-2. So kind of diving into West Virginia a little more. 5-7 last year. Neil Brown, 5th season already, but he's on the hot seat, as you can see by the 22-25 record. Last season, not a bad offense, almost 31 points a game, 400 yards. Defense really struggled, though, 33 points a game, 412 yards a game. Big losses on defense, too, with Dante Stills, who was a pretty decently high draft pick. The other defensive tackle, Jordan Jefferson, off to LSU in a transfer move. Lost their top 2 receivers from last year in Bryce Ford-Wheaton and Caden Prather. Someone Penn State will still see this year, actually. Key returners, Garrett Green, the quarterback, who kind of played at the end of last year after JT Daniels stunk it up at his 6th school. CJ Donaldson, I went on a West Virginia podcast last week to preview this game. They talked about this guy the entire time. They love him. Let's see here. He only played about 8 games, kind of came on at the end, but only 87 carries, 526 yards, 8 touchdowns. Actually came in as a hybrid receiver tight end. He's almost 6'3", I think, and then ended up playing running back. I don't know if it was out of necessity or, they were a little more loaded at receiver last year, I guess. I don't know if that played into it. One offensive lineman I have here, Wyatt Millam, left tackle, a guy Penn State fans are familiar with. They recruited him pretty hard a couple years ago. Devin Carter, Penn State transfer commit at one point last year, now going to be the number 1 receiver with West Virginia. So, yeah, that's kind of the offensive outlook there. Defense, Sean Martin had a couple sacks last year as defensive end, and Lee, I guess that's Kopongda. I don't know how you say that. Led the team with tackles, almost 100 last year. But this team, they were really bad against the pass last year, 262 yards allowed a game through the air. So they brought in, I think, what these guys told me, 4 transfers in the secondary. And then they totally seem to have ignored their front 7, which lost their best 2 defensive tackles. So it was easy to run on them or easy to throw on them last year. I think it might be the opposite this year, where it's a little easier to run on them.
Yeah, I think you said it all. The 20.5-point line kind of scares me a little bit. Just to take the points or to give the points, just because, first real game for Drew Aller, not Alar Alec, as we all know. Breaking in a little bit of a new offense, some new guys there, especially the quarterback. 20 and a half. So otherwise, I think Penn State should win this game pretty handily. I don't know that I'd trust them by 3 touchdowns in the first game.
I mean, very exciting season opener. Beaver Stadium under the lights, Labor Day weekend, Power 5 conference team. So, it's going to be an exciting game. Nate, I think you hit it on the nail on the head. It's going to be tough just covering those points in the first game. They know when people are going to have their footings, but overall, Penn State's got a better team. We should be able to pull away in the second half and win this one.
Yes, that's week 1 there, a game I think a lot of people are looking forward to, especially the tailgates. So week 2, Delaware. I don't know. The line, I don't even think there's going to be a line on this game. The last time I did see a line on a Penn State game, I think it was when they played Idaho to start 2019. Penn State, 99% chance to win, first ever matchup between the two teams. This game is on Peacock, by the way. I don't know.
What?
It's on Peacock. Yeah, neither do I. So, yeah. I guess I'm going to go to that game, I guess. Then that's the only option I have. Last season, 8-5 in the Colonial Athletic Association. Ryan Carty, who played at Delaware, second season. Don't ask for a lot of stats on this team. It was really hard to find. All I know is they scored 28 points last year and gave up 18. They lost their quarterback, and they brought in a quarterback from like Iowa Central or something to be the quarterback. So
I would say back to Delaware, they are a pretty good FCS school.
Oh,
they
yeah.
are.
They make the playoffs often.
They play well. So I think it's good. Like if we are going to play an FCS school, get one that is kind of like a powerhouse or does well for them. And that's also awesome for those kids getting to come to a big stadium and play a big-time game.
Late 90s, early 2000s, they were – I feel like they won a national championship or two. Won AA. So they have a good program. It's just they're not – 99% seems about right for the –
Joe Flacco went there. Yeah.
Who Penn State had a transfer linebacker.
Yeah, Pat Devlin went there too. Oh yeah,
they got a solid
Troy Reader, right?
Yeah, Troy Reader. Yeah,
and then got drafted out of there.
Yeah, so played for the Rams. Yeah,
yep.
He's on that Super Bowl team, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
Yeah. Not a lot of information available about this. Drew, whatever his last name is, should be out of this game by halftime. Maybe give Bo Perbiola a few reps, which will be nice. All right, week 3. I think this is an interesting test. Penn State goes to Illinois. Noon game. It's 11 a.m. local kick in Illinois, though. Penn State given a 72% chance to win. There's not an early line here, and we know what happened last time these two teams faced off. 20-18, Illinois win in 9 overtimes. Penn State overall dominates the thing, though. Pretty good year for Illinois last year. 8-5, had Michigan on the ropes for the majority of that game, only lost by 2. Offense, kind of middle of the pack. Defense, really good, though. First in the country in scoring defense at 12.8 a game. Lost a lot, though. Chase Brown, workhorse running back, and a lot from that secondary. Sidney Brown, Devin Witherspoon, Jartavius Martin. Big drop-offs, but they return the best defensive tackle duo in the Big Ten in, I guess that's Jerzan Newton and Keith Randolph Jr. So they'll be hard to run against, is I guess the best way to put that.
Yeah, I do. Last year they made their wins, which they started out really hot, right, and damn near beat Michigan, kind of late of the season, and it was on the run. It was on the ground with Chase Brown on offense, and then just a dominant defense. I think I just looked the other day. They were the best in the nation behind like Air Force, if you take out the 1AA opponents. So really good there. And they return a lot. But this is a perfect test at this time where you're going to play a good defensive line. So, this will be Aller's 3rd starting game. Maybe you can't rely so heavily on the run game here and you have to air it out a little bit more. I think it's an opportune time where you're going up against a not so tremendous offense too. So it's not like we're going to get beat up on the other side of the ball. So I think this is a good matchup for the time of year that it is.
Everyone says it, but just Brett Bielema knows how to coach in the Big Ten, knows how to win football games, and he's going to have this team ready to play. Talent-wise, we all know Penn State's way more talented, way more deep. They got those 4 or 5-star blue chip players, but it doesn't matter in a game like this most of the time. Brett Bielema's going to have the game plan ready. It really just comes down to execution, and if Drew's kind of up to the steading to hit those big-time throws that he's going to need to make every now and then. I will say Illinois has brought in a pretty good transfer quarterback. I think Altmaier is better than people expect.
Yeah.
And he's someone that they might be able to lean on every now and then for a big play for themselves. So I could see this going into the late third quarter, but then Penn State pulling away late and winning this game.
Yeah, I think they just have to take advantage of the fact that Illinois has a lot of shuffling going on in that secondary. And, we've talked about the Penn State receivers, but the talent is there, and Aller has the talent to get it done against a younger secondary this time around. So that's kind of the hope there.
Certainly a great test, though.
Yeah, definitely.
And they start out with Toledo and then Kansas. Those are
some, Toledo's not a bad team.
Yeah, so we'll know something about them going into that game, I think.
Yeah, so and then I guess the second part of that Illinois game is that the next week is the whiteout, a game Penn State really wants to win against Iowa, dating back to what happened in 2021. So another night game, this time on CBS. Penn State opens as an early 10.5-point favorite, almost an 81% chance given a win by ESPN. We know what happened last time out in Kinnick, 23-20 Iowa after Sean Clifford went down. Penn State leads the all-time series 17-14. Kirk Ferrett's back for year 25. Offense, one of the worst in the country. Defense, probably maybe the best in the country. Only give up 13.3 points per game, just second to Illinois, actually. They do lose a decent amount on defense. Your top 2 tacklers, Jack Campbell, Seth Benson, your linebackers are gone. Sam Laporta, the pretty good tight end's gone. Lucas Van Ness was a first-round pick at defensive end, but bringing Cade McNamara from Michigan to play quarterback. You have Eric All, Cooper DeJean's back in what leads a really strong secondary, actually. So there's some pieces back there. The one thing with this offense is Brian Ferentz is still the offensive coordinator. And I think if we saw what Charlie Jones did last year with Purdue, it's that maybe the pieces are there for Iowa. They just don't know how to use them. So I like them having McNamara doesn't scare me that much, actually.
Well, he got hurt about, several days into camp and has been limited since. So they're trying to install a new offense with a new quarterback. I think that puts them a little bit behind the 8 ball from the standpoint of kind of getting really together on their offense. But they did bring in an Ohio State transfer wide receiver too, who I failed to list here. Caleb Brown. Yeah. So, they're going to have more weapons than they had in years past. But to go from 259 yards per game. Okay. So I have it at 259 offensive yards per game to anything respectable is a big jump, right? So one player is not going to make that difference. So, it's kind of the same thing almost as the Illinois team, except typically Kirk Ferentz scares me less than does Brent Bielema for, going up against James Franklin, honestly.
Yeah.
2021 notwithstanding.
I agree. But this is also another team you're just going to – you know what you're getting before you go into the game. And playing Iowa always comes down to your execution more than anything. You can't really let Iowa dictate the flow of the game. You've seen when Penn State's blown them out, it's been our control from the start of the game. And you've seen these games where it's lingered into the fourth quarter and they've either Iowa's pulled away or we've won a close one. It's because we've kind of played their game, played sloppy at those turnovers, whether it's due to wet conditions or injuries or whatnot. But you know what you're going to get with this team, whether they're horrible on offense or not. Really, right out, we have a better team. It shouldn't be one that scares us, but it's still Iowa.
Interesting this year, too, with the new rules change where the clock doesn't stop on first downs anymore. So teams that, like Iowa, like Illinois, will try to burn the clock throughout the game, and we'll see how that impacts number of possessions and things like that. It could be fairly substantial.
Absolutely.
There we go. Okay, so we got Game 5 here, Northwestern. This is a game, not a line available. Penn State given an 85% chance to win, though. Last year in the Hurricane game, I guess if you want to call it that, Penn State won 17-7, all-time series. Penn State 15-5. So 1-11 last year, and Pat Fitzgerald's not the head coach anymore. So we know what happened over the summer. David Braun is, I guess, the interim coach. I don't think he was given the full tag yet. So this is a really bad scoring offense. not even 2 touchdowns a game. Defense over 28 giving up a game. Big losses, obviously Fitzgerald, probably the biggest one on this team, but Evan Hull, a pretty good running back. Peter Skoronski was a first-round pick at left tackle. Lost Malik Washington, their leading receiver. I'm not going to try to pronounce that name, but he led the team in sacks. They get Ben Bryant, the Cincinnati quarterback transfer. A.J. Henning, the Michigan transfer, kind of a special teams guy too, pretty good punt returner, kick returner. And Bryce Gallagher led the team in tackles last year. So I don't know what you take away from this team right now, because they're in a really tough spot with a lot of guys transferring out in the wake of what happened.
I mean, I'll tell you what, we got to be the biggest Northwestern fans possible this year, just in case there is that 3-way tie.
Yeah.
So, I mean, no matter what it is, we want this team to be better than what everyone else is projecting them to be.
Yeah, that is a tremendous point. So for people who are unaware, if it's a 3-way tie with Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State, it comes down to the opponent Big Ten West records who you played. And if Northwestern goes 0-9 in the conference or whatever it is, that really hurts Penn State's chances to win the Big Ten or go to the Big Ten championship game. So, yeah, very, very strong point there.
Yeah,
but they stink. They should be. They're either going to stink as bad as historic UMass, or they will find a way to rally and win some games because they think Pat Fitzgerald got railroaded, whether or not you believe so.
Yeah, that's a good point too. So yeah, I don't know what you're going to expect from this team. Really, it's an interesting dynamic. Obviously, not a good one, but it is what it is. So Penn State has their bye week, and then some people will joke they have another bye week, but they do come home for homecoming and face UMass. So I doubt you're going to get a line on this game either. Penn State given a 99% chance to win this game. They only met one time ever, 48-7, and this is the Adam Breneman Bowl, actually.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, so this will be an interesting game, but last year, not a good year for UMass, 1-11. Don Brown, the Michigan DC, comes over. Worst offense in college football last year, actually, 12.5 points per game. Defense got beat up a little bit too. They bring in an interesting transfer at quarterback, the Clemson kid, Tayson. We try not to say his last name because we can't. We call him Tayson P, because he was the talk of Penn State for a little bit after 2020 when everyone wanted Sean Clifford out the door.
That's not
obviously.
True.
Yeah, he was.
No, it was.
I don't know where you were.
It was DJ.
Okay.
No,
it was him.
Starting quarterback. No,
I'm telling you, it was him.
I'll go back.
You could argue. I'm telling you. But yeah, and former Penn State safety Tyler Rudolph is there. I don't. There's not a lot of takeaway from this team either. Obviously, Ohio State's the next week, so this is, I guess a good tune-up game. I guess just get the guys in and out. It seems like this team struggled last year. I think their one win was against Stony Brook, so not expecting too much here. I don't know what you guys have for this one.
Yeah, no. They're going to win.
Historically, Penn State's been bad off a bye, so who knows? Maybe coming playing a nice little beat-up team and then going into Ohio State.
Yeah, I think the positioning of this game is very good because we do know Penn State has been historically a kind of a slow starter off the bye, and more times than not, they've actually lost off the bye. So, yeah, I'm kind of a fan of it not being. Now, you have to take every team seriously, obviously, but a team that at home you should, have your way with rather easily. You keep looking at that, Nate. I'm telling you, that's who it was.
I swear it was DJ.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
Okay.
All right, week 7. Penn State goes to the Horseshoe, Ohio State. Likely big noon. This game does not have a set time yet. Early line has Ohio State as a 10-point favorite. Ohio State given an 86% chance to win this game, but I think they're number 1 on the ESPN Power Index this year, so that would explain that. Last year, we know what happened. 44-31. Game was a lot closer than the next score would indicate. Let's see, 11-2 last year, lost to Michigan and then lost to Georgia in the playoff semifinal. Very good offense last year, 44 points per game, almost 500 yards a game. Defense was pretty good at 21 points a game, but I want to look at those key losses because CJ Stroud will be the one that sticks out. But Paris Johnson and DeJuan Jones and Luke Whippler, might be just as big, if not bigger, than losing Stroud. There's been a lot of talk of struggles with the offensive line with Ohio State coming out of camp. They returned Marvin Harrison, Emeka Ibuka, Trayvon Henderson, Mayan Williams. You could go on with that offense, and the defense has some pretty solid pieces too, led by Tommy Eichenberg, who I think had like 120 tackles last year. So there's still a lot of talent coming back to this team, but the losses on offense obviously stick out.
So yeah, the two new starters at tackle are getting pretty beat up on Twitter, at least. And you wonder though, is that because they are dropping such a big drop off from the guys they had last year, or is JTT and Jack Sawyer just that good? And you know, it's like, you know, if Olu was losing battles to Chop Robinson every day in practice, you would not maybe think so negatively of that. I hope it's the former and that they just aren't as good as they were last year. But we'll see how that goes in 7 or 8 weeks and see who starts at quarterback for them. But I do think that matters as well, right? You don't have the CJ Stroud returning for his second year like you did last year and things. So you're going to break in a new quarterback. They always seem to adjust. It never matters really, but it has to catch up with them eventually. They can't strike gold on their quarterback every single time.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see who ends up being their quarterback, whether they start with a 2-quarterback system or go with one guy right out the gate and he sticks with it all year. I mean, obviously they have talent. They got a bunch of guys that they've recruited well, whether it's up and down the roster from quarterback to receiver to defense, anywhere. I mean, they got talent on that team. So it really comes down to kind of executing in this game, limiting mistakes. And then obviously this is kind of one of those games where Franklin's key signatures of the explosive plays and who wins those battles, that's really going to help us in these games, I think. And having the big arm quarterback and Drew and stretching the defense, hitting on a couple of deep balls, Singleton breaking a big run, Theo going over the middle for a 40-yard catch or something like that's going to help spark this game.
Yeah, for sure. One point I'll make is Howard Griffith from the Big Ten Network just ranked his top edge rushers in the conference. Number 1 was Chop Robinson. Number 3 was Adisa Isaac. Those two guys against this quote-unquote struggling Ohio State offensive line, they have a chance to really be the difference in this game. Obviously, Penn State has not won the horseshoe since 2011, and that was a really bad Ohio State team at that time. So this isn't something that happens often. So
what's the date of this game, though? Just it's like the 17th or something. Yeah?
October 21st.
Every time they play on my birthday week, they win. So they're going to win.
All right, interesting.
Mark it down.
Interesting.
I'll be there.
All right, week 8, back home against Indiana right before Halloween. No lines so far. Penn State given a 93% chance to win this game, 45-14 last year. Penn State historically dominates this series 24-2. Tom Allen might be on the hot seat after 2-10, and now 4-8. Offense struggled last year. Defense was really bad. 34 points a game, 450 yards given up a game. The losses are not – I don't really think they've lost that much that's significant to them. I feel like kind of what they brought in is better than what they've lost. Taven Jackson, a transfer from Tennessee, was actually rated as a 4-star as a transfer. So Cam Camper, their leading receiver from last year, comes back. Andre Carter was one of the highest rated defensive ends in the transfer portal. I think he had a 93 grade, which is pretty high. Overall, they brought in 23 guys from the transfer portal. So I can't even really sit here and tell you what I think this team is like because, I mean, 23 guys, you start 22. So they could have an entirely new starting 22 going. I mean, they really are trying something new here, to figure out the mistakes of the last 2 years.
If you think coordinator turnover is bad when we go, 1 year between offensive coordinator changes, imagine turning over 23 guys plus your freshman class. I think this is one of those things where it can be, if they don't gel pretty early, the cultural aspect of this, like you've seen at Michigan State when they kind of started to go downhill last year, they will fall apart. And they were 4-8 last year. There's not a lot to build on already. This could be a disaster for them. Or maybe they brought in enough talent and guys who are bought into the system that they do something useful. But odds would go the other way.
It's I think it's another home game here for the students. Really, it's not to be too worried about as fans. Obviously, every game's important. They got to show up focused, but it's another team that Penn State just clearly out talents, and they should be able to pull this one away pretty early.
Yeah, I will say, you brought up the whole transfer thing. It could be 2021 Michigan State where it works, or it could be 2022 Michigan State where it doesn't work. So, just keep an eye on them. It's hard to really project this team just with the influx in and out that they had. All right, let's go on to Maryland. This is an interesting game, I guess. November 4th, no time given. Penn State given a 73% chance to win. Penn State won 30-0 last year in a shutout. All-time series, 42-3-1. So that's something. Pretty good year, though, for Maryland, actually. 8-5. Had both Michigan and Ohio State on the ropes at one point in those games. Offense, not too bad at 28 points per game. Defense, 23. I mean, I guess it could be a little better. They lose Hakeem Jarrett, C.J. Dupree transferred to Alabama. Deontay Banks was a first-round pick. Jalen Duncan was their best offensive lineman. Greg Rose was their best pass rusher. They bring back Mini Tua. That's big. They bring back Roman Hemby. They bring back Corey Dyches. They bring back Jason Jones for his 6th year. And they brought in Caden Prather from West Virginia. I said we see him this year anyway. And they brought in another kid, I think Tyrese Chambers. He went to some South Carolina school or something, a smaller school, but he's up here now. That's going to be the receivers. On defense, they are not good up front, but they have 2 really good linebackers, and Jayshon Barham, who I was hoping was going to pull a Chop Robinson and come over here after year 1. That did not happen. And then Ruben Hippolyte, another pretty decent linebacker. With this team, the skill positions are always there. It's just the offense. They brought in 4 transfers on the offensive line to try to fix this problem. I think 2 of those guys are projected to start. There's just the lines to me with them. We saw it last year when they had negative rushing yards against Penn State till the 4th quarter, I think. Like, to me, their lines, I can't take what Talia could do seriously until I see improvements with their lines.
Yeah, they playing them in November as a gift every year. They will start, as they always do, and as we talk about every time, they will start out very well early in the year. They will have one game where young Tua throws like 4 picks, or they get 6 total. They give up 6 total turnovers, and that's when the wheels come off. Yeah. Playing them away, though, for Penn State, they did score 31 points at home and give up 21, and versus scoring 24 on the road and giving up 25. So they are definitely a better home team. The 59-0 game a couple of years ago, notwithstanding that fact, but you never know. I always like playing them later in the year because they tend to not be able to hold it together for the whole 12 games.
Well, I've heard some people say this could be someone we overlook just with Michigan coming the following week, but I just think with Franklin's tenure, those 2 kind of rough taps we've had with Maryland where they beat us and there's been a lot of that shit talk afterwards. I don't see Franklin letting this one by, and that's someone we're just going to take care of pretty easily. And Franklin, I think Franklin's going to put them away early so they can kind of rest some guys, get them ready for the following week.
Yeah. All right. You brought up that Michigan game, so let's get right into it here. Big noon game, unfortunately. Michigan opens 2.5-point favorite at Beaver Stadium, which is interesting. Last year, best year for Michigan under Jim Harbaugh, 13-1. Won the Big Ten, lost in the playoff semifinal, over 40 points a game. Defense, 16 points a game. Losses, I mean, I think they lose their best 2 pass catchers in Ronnie Bell and Luke Schoonmaker. And Mozzie Smith, I guess it is, and Mike Morris, their best 2 defensive linemen. But they return pretty much everything else. J.J. McCarthy at quarterback. Probably the best running back duo in the country. Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards. Zach Sinter's probably the best guard in the country. Trevor Keegan is a really good left tackle. Chris Jenkins, pretty good defensive tackle. I only have 1 listed here, but 1 really good linebacker in Junior Colson. Cornerback, Will Johnson. They got Mike Sanders still. They got dudes all over the place. Instead of looking at their strengths, because it's a lot of things, I'm just going to point out a couple things I think are weaknesses, and that's I'm interested who catches the ball for this team. I know they're a run-first team, but, losing Bell and Schoonmaker is a lot. And who's going to get after the quarterback? Because Mike Morris led this team with 7.5 sacks, and I don't think anyone else on this team had over 4. So those are the two things I'm curious about. Who's going to catch the ball and who's going to get after the quarterback for them?
I'm looking at the big banter preseason Big Ten offense, and Michigan has 5 guys on offense and 2 on defense in the first team, and then another like 3 or 4 on either side of the ball in the second team or so. Just a couple on defense. And that doesn't count Blake Corum, who didn't make their first or second team. Right. So they're stacked, and their offensive line returns almost everybody, including 3 potential all Big Ten first team guys. Yeah. They might have problems plugging some holes that they find on defense last year, but that offense returns damn near everything, despite some of the pass catchers that you said. They're going to be really good. And I don't this is one, anybody who's, I don't understand the Penn State has a better chance of beating Michigan. Granted, that's at home versus Ohio State. I think Penn State is historically, over the last 7 to 10 years, matched up better with Ohio State than they have Michigan. I know we have won or beat Michigan more times, but at the same time, when Michigan runs the ball well and Penn State kind of get blown out, as happened last year. So they have to prevent that. And that's what it comes down to, I think. Yeah. In my opinion.
Yeah, obviously it's one of the 3 biggest games of the Big Ten this year. It's kind of how Nate was hitting on it. It's put up or shut up time. Obviously, we got embarrassed last year in Ann Arbor, and that's been a talking point for Coach Diaz all offseason. And I think being at home will help with that. Obviously, I think, Nate, you hit it nail on the head again with Ohio State. Probably we match up a lot better with them. But being at home will definitely help. And seeing what we can do with that game. It's an important game, so we'll see what happens.
And truth be told, if it is this is the 10th game, I think, right? If it's somehow 10-0, Penn State against 10-0 Michigan, you throw everything out the window, because they're not going to get blown out if that's the case. No,
I really don't think so. This is a big one. I will say, Michigan has struggled in Beaver Stadium under Harbaugh. They were a lot better than Penn State in 2015. That game was 28-16. They lost the next 2, getting blown out in 2017. Really got blown out in 2019 until Penn State just kind of stopped scoring. And then, needed a broken play against a really banged up Penn State team to win in 2021. So they do kind of struggle here. And I do take that into account here more than I guess some other people are. But it's not the greatest matchup.
And I get that too. It's a very weird series that way.
It is. They both teams are really bad at the other team's place. Right. Is the best way to put it. Yeah. All right. So senior day actually against Rutgers. Then no date yet. It's too early. Line way too early. Penn State given a 93% chance to win. This game was 10-7 Rutgers, and it finished 55-10 last year. So that's Rutgers for you, I guess. 4-8 last year. Greg Schiano in his second stint at Rutgers, 15th season overall. Offense was not good. 17 points a game. Defense, 29 points a game. But that unit to me wasn't really as bad. It was just the offense was so bad and gave them no help. But
so the defense, I have them giving up 368 yards per game. Yours is a little different because I throw out any of the one double or the FCS teams. Okay. That was 44th in the country. Yeah, that's really good. Now they gave up 31 points a game, which is 104th, and they scored they were 128th in scoring. So you're not going to win many games like that. But their defense was a little more stout. I didn't really dig into why, how the yards, the lack of yardage translated into points. But I would suppose it's a lot of offensive turnovers, giving short fields and things like that. Just the offense not being able to sustain drives at all. Is likely some of that was.
The one thing I'll say about this team, I had to list the punter as a key loss. So he was a good punter. Don't get me wrong, but that's kind of where we're at with them. Gavin Wimsatt, a former 4-star recruit, he was not good at all last year. So I'm just curious to see how that.
This is the Kirk Shiraka Bowl. Rutgers has Kirk Shiraka as their offensive coordinator and Joe Harazmiak, who was also the former defensive coordinator at Minnesota. So they're just poaching all the Minnesota guys. We'll see how that translates, but I don't think it's going to make many wins.
Thought process, and not really to be kind of negative here, but theoretically, I'd be interested to see how we bounce back if we were to drop that Michigan game in a close loss or something.
Yeah.
If they had come out flat at all, and this would be a game into the third or fourth quarter. Obviously, we hope for the best, and that doesn't happen, but that'd be something to follow. Just
it's going to be a noon game, yeah. Right. It's going to be a little low energy if they lost against Michigan. I agree.
I think either way, though. I mean, if they beat Michigan, you start overlooking the final few regular season games. 'Cause, it's not correct, but you may feel like your regular season's over with. It's time to start talking Big Ten titles. So, I think either way, you have to at least pay attention to the first half of this game. Rutgers always kind of wants the upset over Penn State. It hasn't come since James Franklin's been here. So I don't know. This is a team where you respect them, but the talent difference seems to be growing, even though they had a decent recruiting class a couple of years ago.
Very good. So let's get to the last one, so then we can bring our guest in.
Yep. All right. So we got final game of the season. Penn State, Michigan State neutral site, Ford Field in Detroit. Another night game, 7:30, NBC. Penn State given a 65% chance to win. I'm assuming that
too, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Last meeting, Penn State won 35-16. That game was, I think, 21-16 at one point, though. It got a little hairy. Cool thing about this series is it's all tied up, 18-1. So this is the tiebreaker game, which is nice.
Yeah.
Yep. 5-7 last year. We kind of mentioned their 2021 transfer team worked, went 11-2. Their 2022 transfer team did not work. Offense, pretty middle of the pack, almost 25 points a game, 350 yards a game. Defense struggled, 28 points a game, over 415 given up a game. They lost practically their whole passing offense. Peyton Thorne transfers to Auburn. Keon Coleman transfers to Florida State. Jaden Reed goes to the NFL. I mean, this is a team that was already not putting up a lot of numbers, and then they lost all that on offense, which is a lot to give up. Defense, not that bad. And what they return, I mean, they returned Trey Mosley at receiver. He's been there a while. Malik Carr, Purdue transfer, tight end, not bad. I'm not going to try to pronounce that name, but A&M transfer at defensive end. They needed to get after the quarterback better. And Cal Haladay led the Big Ten, I think, in tackles per game last year, had 120 or something like that. So not a lot of decent pieces on defense this year. They also brought in a lot of transfers to fix their secondary, which was a problem. So I actually think this is a team that's going to be better on defense and then worse than it was on offense.
This will be a fun one just because it's on a Friday night and it's at Ford Field. But I think Penn State kills. I don't think they're going to be good this year. Mel Tucker is going to get fired.
I mean, no concerns about a snowstorm or anything crazy, thunder delay, whatever.
Right.
So that's awesome. Nate, I'd actually disagree a little bit. I think Mel Tucker's not a half bad coach, so I'll be able to see if he can pull something.
I didn't say he was a bad coach. I just think he is building this the wrong way, and like that 2021 transfer thing really screwed them because
it worked.
Yeah, exactly. I saw something on Twitter today, like success in your first chance is like the biggest kiss of death ever, or something like that, right? Because you think you can do whatever, and it was totally unrelated to football. But I like him. I liked him at Colorado too. But man, I don't know. I think he's not doing it the right way for stability here.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say is if this is a 5-6 Michigan State team at the time this game rolls around, which I think is very possible, you're going to get their best shot for a bowl game. They're going to pull out some trick plays and stuff. They're not a team to take lightly. There's definitely enough talent there. They've recruited pretty well, actually. They brought in a decent amount of 4-stars last cycle. So maybe if some of the older guys are struggling by this time of the year, the younger guys, get the okay because you get the 4 games before the red shirt is burned. So, that's something else to look at there too.
Very good. That was all right, though.
Yeah. All right. And we are now happy to be joined by former Penn State tight end and now big media personality for the program, Adam Breneman. Thanks for coming on. It's great to talk to you here.
So guys, appreciate having me on. Excited to talk to you and talk some Penn State football.
Yeah. So we want to just kind of start with, I guess, Drew Aller is where to start this. A lot was made about his rep count last year. Some people thought it was way too low. I don't know where you stand on that. I mean, if you look at some of the quarterbacks that have redshirted their freshman year and then came out blazing the second year, Johnny Manziel, Jameis Winston, Justin Fields, CJ Stroud, the list goes on, that they got less reps than he did. Do you think the rep count was fair and enough? And also, how much stock do you put into sitting behind a 6-year guy like Sean Clifford and what that could do for him long term?
It's a good question. I really believe that the way Coach Franklin played that whole situation was perfect, and it's something that you're able to do when you've built credibility and you've won games. And as a head coach, he had as much outside pressure to make a change at quarterback and to play Drew as really any one of the Big Ten probably had. I mean, there was so much talk, and people wanted to see Sean in his 7th year of college football hit the bench and Drew to come in. And really, that's a problem that coaches deal with all the time when you have a young, highly recruited quarterback coming in behind a veteran guy who's played a lot, who hasn't yet won the big game and hasn't won a championship. So that's a common problem in college football coaches have to face. A lot of times coaches who don't have the stability, who don't have the confidence, who don't have the kind of the leeway from the program and from the administration and from the fans have to make that change because the public pressure is so much. Coach Franklin, on the other hand, was able to stick to his guns. He's proved that he's doing things that are best for the program, and I think played it perfectly. It's easy for fans to sit there and say that Drew was a better option at quarterback, but I know, and you guys know, those guys in practice see the situation every single day, and I have no doubt that if they believed Drew Aller was the better choice at quarterback, he would have been the starter. But that wasn't the case. Sean Clifford was the better quarterback. He led them to win the Rose Bowl, ended his career on a really high note. I thought he played really well throughout the year. So that whole situation and dynamic, I give Coach Franklin a lot of credit for it. And at the same time was able to give Drew Aller enough reps to get him some quality time, to let him see what he can do against some really good opponents. Got to play against Purdue, got thrown him in the lights when he didn't think he was going to have to play. So I really believe that whole situation, the balance of it all, played out really well for everyone involved. It played out well for Clifford, played out well for Penn State. They were able to win 10 games during the season, go off and win the Rose Bowl, and for Drew to get the reps he needed. And I thought Drew looked really good and comfortable. Also looked like a freshman at times, but I thought he looked really comfortable in the snaps that he got.
So soon to be starting Green Bay Packers quarterback Sean Clifford. Adam, you spent a lot of time with Drew this offseason, interviewed him, I guess, a couple times maybe. What has most impressed you about him coming into the year?
A lot. He reminds me of, really, you think back to the last time there was as much excitement around a quarterback coming into Penn State, it was Christian Hackenberg, right? Yeah. 2013. He reminds me a lot of Christian from a mindset, personality standpoint, both super mature, great arm talent. I think Drew, when you talk to him, number one, he's a massive human being. So Drew is enormous. I don't know if you've met him in person yet, but he's huge. He makes me look tiny, and I'm 6'4", 250. So he's a big guy. He's extremely personable, just an easy guy to like. He's also very humble and quiet, and you kind of remember when you're around him that he's a 19-year-old kid, right? He hasn't been in the spotlight yet. But it's funny. I would say I've interviewed him, like you said, twice now. I've even seen him mature from a leader interview kind of, face of the program type standpoint from when I first interviewed him maybe in May to now when I just talked to him last week or 2 weeks ago. Even the way he carries himself and how he prepares for that kind of stuff is really good. I think he's easy guy to root for. We talked on my most recent interview about kind of taking on the leadership role a little bit more and how he's trying to be the leader. But it's also tough to be the leader when you haven't gone out and won games yet, right? So the locker room doesn't want to have a leader who hasn't gone and done it on the field yet. So we talked about that balance and dynamic, and I just been really impressed with him. He's a great great kid, obviously a special talent. I'm excited to see what he does.
Yeah, just kind of talking about the offense as a whole here, then a lot has been made about the receivers where there's a lot of question marks there. Do you think they need a 2019 LSU, 2020 Alabama receiving core to go all the way? Or can they go the Georgia route where it's defense, tight ends, running backs, strong offensive line play? Do you think that's more the route Penn State can take to go to a national championship?
Yeah, another good question. Someone's going to have to step up at receiver if they want to go all the way. That's the reality. The good thing is when you have – there's a lot of positives about this offense, right? I look first at the offensive line. For so long at Penn State, the issue has been the offensive line. It's always been the depth, not having the stability at the O-line room. It stems all the way back to the sanction years and the scholarship count. It's been a trickle-down effect to now. They finally have the strength of their offense is, you could say, is the offensive line, maybe the running back room as well. So getting Olu to come back was obviously massive. The offensive line, having them there as the staple of the offense is huge. Having the running game that they have is awesome. Like it's so good for the quarter. Like it can't even put it into words how much that helps a quarterback to have Nick Singleton and Katron Allen in the backfield. Tight end room is special. Theo will be, I think, a day 2 draft pick. Tyler Warren's a guy who would start at most programs in the Big Ten. They got a great tight end room. The issue is going to become when you're that'll win you a lot of games in the Big Ten, right? That'll win you most games in the Big Ten. But if they're going to knock off Michigan or Ohio State, which I think the consensus is you got to win one of those games,
right?
You're gonna need playmakers to make plays. It's gonna have to happen. So a guy like Condre Lambert-Smith, or a guy like Dante Cephas, or a guy like maybe a young guy, maybe Liam Clifford, like one of these guys is gonna have to step up and become the go-to guy when Drew Aller needs to make plays. And again, the good news is Drew has elite arm talent. What Drew brings to the table is the combination of arm talent with accuracy. Arm talent doesn't mean anything. And when people refer to arm talent, as you guys know, but for your listeners, when people refer to arm talent, normally they're talking about arm strength, like the ability to stand on one hash of the field and throw it 40 yards on the other hash of the field on a straight line on a bullet. But arm talent means nothing if you're not accurate. The most important trait for quarterback is accuracy, and Drew has that unique combination of having both. He's accurate with the football, and he has the arm talent. When you have that, you turn a receiver into a little bit better after the catch, a little bit more explosive because of the accuracy. The difference in sometimes catching a dig route for 15 yards and falling and catching a dig route and taking it for a 60-yard explosive play is just ball placement. It's just where the ball is. Is it on his hip a little bit behind him, like 2 inches behind him, or is it in stride? So, again, I know I'm getting long-winded here, but Drew has the ability to make receivers really good, but you still need against Ohio State or Michigan, someone's going to have to step up and make a big play. So I think that's your answer. You can win most games in the Big Ten with what you got, but someone's got to step up at receiver to become one of the elite top 2 teams in the Big Ten.
Who have you seen really that you think can be that guy who steps up right now?
Yeah, so good question. I've been to one practice, so I haven't really seen a ton. I haven't seen. I'm not privy to practice film.
Yeah, okay.
I talk to a lot of guys, so I hear a lot of names get thrown around. Dre is someone that everyone talks about right now, and kind of I think for Dre, Condre Lambert-Smith, I really think it's a lot of times been his. It hasn't been the speed and the playmaking ability. It's been everything else around it. It's been, is he going to line up right? Do we know? Is he going to be healthy? It's been all the other things, the accountability things for him, from what I've heard. I think he's really taken his mindset,
it seems like,
the offensive side, the mental part of the game to the next level. So I think I'm excited to see him. Everyone's talking about Wallace too, and what he's been able to do, and he's flashed in practice a little bit. It's funny, every time I ask people about the receivers, they keep bringing up Theo Johnson. So I think we'll see Theo Johnson moved around and played all over the field. We're going to see more and more unique personnel packages than we've seen in the past from Mike Yurcich. So we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if majority of plays have only 2 wide receivers on the field, between the ability to go 12 personnel with Theo and Tyler and the ability to go 21 personnel with Katron and Nick, and the ability also to go 22. I mean, they'll have the ability, and we will see this. I guarantee you we're going to see it against West Virginia. We're going to see them go 22 personnel. Again, this isn't a source or I'm just saying this is what I think they will do. If I'm like Yursich, they will go 22 against West Virginia, and they will line up and they'll pound it down your throat with two tight end with Tyler Warren and Theo Johnson, and they'll have Nick Singleton and K-Tron in the backfield like we've seen them do. And the very next play, they'll go spread and they'll put Tyler Warren and Theo Johnson out wide. They'll put Nick in the slot. They'll have one of the receivers out there, and the ability to do all that kind of stuff with the personnel you have is special. And the defense doesn't know what you're going to do. They can't match personnel. You know, every time offenses change personnel, the defense is changing personnel to match that personnel. They don't know what they're going to do. So I think the ability to do that makes it really unique, and it takes some pressure off the receiver room a little bit.
Yeah, and seeing K-Tron catch balls last year and Nick starting in some of the practice film this year is really a good sign for that too, to do much more with that 22 or 21 personnel. So one more, if I may. So last year, Drew Aller obviously was probably the biggest addition to the team for the future of that team, but a very close second, if not a 1B thing, was Manny Diaz coming on as defensive coordinator. So talk about what you expect out of that defense with the second year with Manny Diaz at the helm and all the talent that they have coming back.
Yeah, I mean, I've said multiple times now that I think one of the biggest wins in the Big Ten this offseason was keeping Manny Diaz as your coordinator. It wasn't talked about a lot. There weren't a lot of rumors floating around of Diaz leaving, but I know for a fact that he was in the running for or getting considered or pursued for multiple FBS head coaching jobs. So, you know, the ability to keep him in that there is massive for the continuity, for the scheme. And to have both coordinators back for another year. I mean, it helps so much that you can't even really put it into words how big it is for the whole system. It's funny talking to Coach Diaz the other day. I asked him about that directly. I said, you know, your name gets floated up a lot for head coaching opportunities. You're gonna, without a doubt, if you guys have a good year, your name will be on the top of a lot of lists for head coaching jobs. And he said, he had a funny quote. He said, "I've learned in my life that if you're happy, don't mess with happy." And I just thought it was funny. He's like, you know, I'm pretty happy where I'm at, you know, as a defensive coordinator at Penn State. You know, as far as the defense goes, I mean, so much talent. You know, obviously the edge rushers are what stands out. Chop will be a day one pick. You know, Adisa is obviously a freak. You got Denai. I mean, there's so much depth on the edges, and then at the defensive back position, you know, at the end of the day, who's really going to step up outside of, you know, some of those guys that outside of the Kalen King, you know, who's going to step up out there and be the guy that you can count on to play man to man when Manny Diaz wants to do all the different pressure packages that he wants to do. Is Johnny Dixon going to be able to man up and be that guy? From what I've heard, I talked to Terry Smith. It sounds like he is. It sounds like he's had a great camp. But obviously when you lose, I forget the exact number, but Terry Smith made the point, and Manny Diaz, that there's a lot of turnovers hanging out in the NFL right now from last year's team. Yeah. You know, between all the guys that ended up getting picked. So a lot of turnovers, a lot of big plays that the defense made that they've lost. So someone's going to have to replace them, and I think they're looking at Johnny Dixon to make a lot of those big plays opposite of Kalen King now.
All right. Really quick here. We know you're pressed for time, so I'm going to let Tyler ask his question. Then we'd love to get your season prediction after that.
Yeah.
Adam, I'm kind of the booze expert for this show. So I just got one silly question for you.
Yeah.
When you're at Penn State, what's kind of like your go-to bar and like drinking? Like what do you do to let loose when you're at Penn State in a non-working environment?
When I'm at Penn State?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm old, guys. So when I was at Penn State, most of those bars weren't even there. So
that's true.
P-Man was G-Man. The Champs downtown was not there. So when I was there, it was the Den. The Den was the spot, right? That's where all the football players went. Now when I go back, definitely a Champs guy now. I mean, you can't really go wrong with Champs. I was just there. I was there not for a party festivity, but more so for dinner the other night when I was up there on Thursday. I think Champs is definitely the spot. And then at P-Man's always so. Mike Gesicki is like the biggest P-Man guy of all time. I mean, like if you ever want to, if you were at Penn State at that time, like you want to guarantee you see Mike somewhere, just go to P-Man and wait for him to walk in. So I used to always go to P-Man with Mike whenever I go up there to visit. Always had a great time there too. Those are kind of the two main. Is there anywhere else that people go up there? Like it's just P-Man and Champs, right?
I'm a big pickles guy, honestly.
Well, it's because you're classy. Yeah, it's like that's like the old school. Yeah.
Don't say you're old. I had a PhD and was working for like 7 years when you were a freshman, so you're not that old. So yeah, we'll get your prediction, but just talk about Happy Valley United a little bit. You've obviously come back. You went away to UMass and then Arizona State, and now you're back running this NIL thing. Everybody should donate at least $50 or whatever you can afford, right? But what brought you back here, and what is driving you and Hackenberg to really, try to be the face of NIL for Penn State?
Yeah, it's a lot of things. I mean, obviously Penn State's a special place to me. When I went to Penn State and when Hack went to Penn State, which is kind of this whole concept is why we decided to do it together is, we went to Penn State for reasons that are bigger than football and bigger than ourselves. I mean, you guys remember it was one of the darkest times in college football history. Was a really negative time around the program, and there wasn't a lot to play for. We were on bowl ban and sanctions. The kids could transfer immediately before the portal, when that was actually shocking that kids could transfer and play right away. And for us, it was all about just trying to rebuild the program and be part of something and be a place. I grew up a Penn State fan. Like I've worshipped Penn State for years since I was a little kid. So it's always meant a lot to me. And then, when I think for Hack and myself, like our careers didn't always go the way we wanted to at Penn State. I mean, my career I got hurt, ended up transferring. I mean, you guys know the story. Hackenberg was a freshman All-American, and then played behind a terrible offensive line. The offense was brutal and didn't end the way he wanted it to either. But I think for us, knowing how special Penn State is, and now with the unique dynamic of college football, we felt like, and myself specifically, that I had really a unique following and kind of credibility in the college football space, and specifically at Penn State, to make an impact in NIL. And I think too, there's been this narrative that Penn State's a little bit behind in NIL, just so that it's been a tough transition. Penn State's a unique place. It's a lot of tradition, a lot of history of doing things one way for a long time. And after a lot of conversations with Coach Franklin and the people running Happy Valley United, wanted to get involved in whatever way possible. So, I'm involved a few different ways. A company I co-founded, Mercury, who manages all my content, does all that, we partnered with the collective. We partnered with Penn State Sports Properties and are, creating a bunch of different ways for cool content, for different podcasts and things like that. And then also for events that fans can do that will benefit the collective and raise money for Happy Valley United. And then too, I felt like at Penn State for us, a lot of the NIL money they've raised so far has been these big checks written by 5 donors, right? But the ability for every fan to get involved somehow. When I launched this Race to 107 with Happy Valley United, and we've been talking about this for a while, to be honest, guys, it's less about the money, right? It's less about raising $107,000. Like that's a lot of money. That'll pay for a lot of guys on that team to get them to come back. But obviously, they need more than that. It's not just about the money. It's about like getting everyone involved. It's about the education. It's about fans seeing that it's important and hearing me talk about it. And the $107,000 was just a number we made up. It's like, let's get 1,000 some fans to give $50. And let's get people involved and rally this community around a cause. Because just because you can't stroke a $50,000 check or a $100,000 check doesn't mean you can't be involved in NIL in some capacity. And maybe one-time $50 donation turns into that person coming to an event in 3 months. Maybe it turns into them coming to something else next year. So really, for me, it's just spreading the word and using kind of the following I built around college football to make an impact at Penn State. Obviously, as a media personality and a guy who calls games now for other teams and things like that, it turns into everyone calling me a Penn State homer all the time. But I got to do what I can do to help the program and help Penn State move forward. And it's been really fun. I mean, the Race to 107, I think in like 3 days now, we've raised $25,000. Have a big announcement tomorrow. I'll just tell you guys now, we just got a matching gift. So we got a donor who's going to match everything we raised in the next 48 hours starting tomorrow. So really cool stuff. That's off to a great start, and the response from the community has been really cool.
Well, great job by you, and I think all the fans should be really proud and thankful for what you're doing for them. So
thank you, man.
For sure. All right, so where are we at? 11-1, 12-0, playoff. Where are we going?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in. I haven't officially made all my season predictions, so like I'll give you guys a little bit of a. I have them. I just haven't officially put them out, right? Like I'm still in that content, but I will give you. I have Penn State at 11-1.
Okay.
Beating Ohio State. So that's why, and the reason is, I always go back to the quarterback position. The fact that Kyle McCord hasn't won that job yet is not a good sign for Ohio State. Not a good sign. I think that my money is now going on Devin Brown. The fact that Kyle McCord's been there for a while and is the veteran going to camp and can't win that job is not a good sign for Ohio State. Now, the only thing I'll say is Ryan Day could just be fooling us all, right? Like he could just be absolutely fooling us. There in college football without having to release a depth chart and all that stuff. People like to play games with the media, and we're easily tricked, obviously. So, but if that really is the case, then that's why I'm getting the 11-1. Penn State will beat Ohio State. I think Michigan's a tough one to beat this season. I think Michigan's about as good as they come. The interesting part will be that whole I don't know if you saw Joel Klatt did a video on the three-way tie on the East.
Yes, we know this in and out. But so though if that comes to pass, right, to get the three-way tie, Ohio State would then have to be good enough to beat Michigan. But if Michigan's beating us at the 10th game of the year, they should be beating Ohio State too. Probably.
No doubt, but as you know, anything can happen.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, but it'll be interesting to see. It's going to be a fun year. What I just said about the quarterback thing at Ohio State is an interesting talk too. Like college football as a whole needs to, especially with where sports betting is on the money going in, needs to have the same rules that the NFL has from a depth chart, injury report standpoint. The fact that coaches try to hide who the starting quarterback is going to be and the broadcasters don't even know. There's games I'm calling. You don't know who the quarterback's going to be until you're up in the booth. I mean, it's ridiculous. Anyway, you're going to get me on a tangent
there. Well, I know you got some things to do, but we definitely appreciate you stopping by, giving us some insight. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, appreciate it. Love what you guys are doing, man. Let's do it again during the season.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right, you got it. All right, so we got his prediction 11-1, and I'm going to tell you right now that is the consensus theme I'm getting because I asked our friends of the show what they also thought. Matty Fresh obviously dropped his new song Nittany Nation, and in there he told me he quoted this to me though. This is a song lyric, but he's like, if they can't stop 15, we might go 15-0, but he goes 11-1. Jesse Della Valle. And a teammate of Adam Breneman actually for a couple of years, 11-1, but he said depends big time on Aller. So I think he kind of was in the camp of that could mean, 15-0, or it could mean 15-0 as well, or it could mean 9-3, 8-4. So he was kind of in the middle there. So yeah, I wanted to get their predictions on here. Obviously, got to do that. So I think we're all taking the over 9.5 wins though. Like we're all comfortably over that.
Yeah. But fuck. It's one of these things where, so let's say you lose to Ohio State and Michigan, right? So then you're at 2. I don't know. What is the probability that they beat the other 10 teams?
Right.
There's going to be a couple of squeakers in there. I mean, I want to say 9.5 is a lock, but
because that does not count
Iowa, right?
Games. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So, but Adam made a good point about Ohio State and is Ryan Day this is the biggest bluff ever, and Kyle McCord is the second coming of freaking Patrick Mahomes or something,
But I mean, who are they bluffing? Because their first three games are Indiana, I think, Youngstown State and someone else, and then they do go to Notre Dame. So if he's trying to bluff for Notre Dame, I guess that's possible. The other factor he mentioned how he was a 5-star and the veteran guy and all that. He was also Marvin Harrison's high school quarterback. Yeah. So they do have a connection there. So that that's something else to take into account. But
then, and I know they won state, right? He beat Bo's. Where did Bo go?
Central York.
Yeah, so they beat Central York in the state finals, I remember. Like, Marvin Harrison is the best receiver in 20 years. Like, how much better maybe not that long, but in a long time, how much better did he make Kyle McCord because he dominated the hell out of all the competition that they played?
True.
That he can't do now, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, so I think we're all 11-1 here. I think I differ where I'm still taking my chances at home against Michigan versus you guys. I don't know where you guys stand.
Give me 12-0.
Okay.
I'm excited.
Nate?
I'm 11. I'm 11-1. Now I'm 11-1. Make the playoff because I think Michigan. I think Ohio State's going to lose 2 or 3 games.
Yeah, I'm going to get into this when we do our playoff prediction in the.
And
next
it goes against my predictions. So.
Right. When I get into this in the next show, but the Northwestern thing just sucks because I do truly believe that these 3 teams go 11-1 with some where they all lose to each other. It's whatever combination you want to put it in, go ahead. But I do think that's what happens. Penn State playing the Big Ten team that'll probably go 0-9 in conference play does not help at all. And they do get Illinois and Iowa, who 2 teams are, maybe capable of going 6-3, 7-2 in conference play. But if the other team's 0-9, that has you at 14-13 best case scenario.
You'd have to have Iowa go 8-1 with the only loss to us, right? And then like Northwestern 0-9,
Illinois 7-2 with
exactly. Us and Iowa, right? That's how you make it in, and that's highly unlikely. Wisconsin's going to be very good, I think.
Yeah, so I have all the confidence that this Penn State team could win the Big Ten. I just truly believe they're going to get boned by this tiebreaker.
But if they get boned by the tiebreaker, and I know this is not what I said in the prediction too, because this is like rationalization and karma.
Right.
So if Michigan goes 11-1, they make it based on the tiebreaker, and then Penn State finishes second, or even second or third or whatever, but they beat Ohio State. Would they get the nod on the playoff, assuming there is a spot there, right? And you only have one SEC team and one ACC team, and USC sucks or something like that. There's a lot of permutations. But
tough year for 2 teams from one conference.
It is. I know it is because there's a lot of good teams out there.
There's going to be a lot of 11-1 conference champs, 12-1. You got to win the conference with this year, I think. So,
yeah, that is kind of where I'm at too, which is a little unfortunate. Just a reminder that we did go through the roster. We went through position breakdowns the past couple of weeks. We split them out by positions, and then we power ranked them. Go check out those videos. I got to say, apparently Dante Cephas is running with the 3s at receiver. So I think I had him starting. I'll take that back. I don't know if that happens right away. Obviously, there's an acclimation period for everyone coming from Kent State to Penn State. It's not as significant as, say, coming from Villanova to Penn State, but there's still a learning curve there. So maybe by midseason he is starting, but I think I had him listed as a starter in there. I think we're just going to pull that one back for now. I think I'm going to go, I would say Omari Evans right now. Sounds like maybe the 3rd starter at wide receiver.
KLS is going to break out just like he did in the Rose Bowl. He's like Adam said, right? I think if he is putting it together more mentally, the physical traits have been there since he was a freshman. So, because he played some as a freshman, right? He was a freshman the same year as Parker Washington was.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's get it. He's my favorite.
Yeah, my
fun year, boys.
Yeah, I think it will be a fun year. I'm pretty sure Nelly is on the 15-0 Natty hype train, so I'm just going to put that out there. We'll get his opinion on that next week. But
he just wants it because he's a senior.
Yeah, that's for sure. So that's going to do it for our Penn State preview. Huge shout out to Adam Breneman. Shout out Matty Fresh and Jesse Del Valle for their input as well. Go check out those position breakdowns, even though I guess they're kind of incorrect now in some spots. But that's what happens when you decide to do something a month in advance. It's how it is. So we will